From ancient scrolls to modern anime, the fox reigns supreme in Japanese folklore. These aren't just any foxes. They are kitsune, mystical, intelligent, and famously shape-shifting beings that can be both benevolent guardians and mischievous tricksters. But why has this particular creature become so deeply woven into the fabric of Japan's mythical landscape? Well, that's what we'll be exploring today, so sit back and relax as we embark on this extraordinary adventure together. And don't forget to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. So, with that being said, let's go, my stoic knights.
The wind danced through the mountain cypress, carrying with it the faintest hint of incense and age-old whispers. In the hidden valley of Shinodazaka, far from the bustling towns of Heiankyo, lay a shrine weathered by centuries, its vermilion gates worn thin by time and devotion. It was here, where the boundary between the visible and the unseen thinned, that the villagers claimed to see the fox spirits walk at dusk. Elder Natsum, with a spine curved like a question mark and eyes like dark stones polished by grief, gathered the children around the fire that night. His voice, gravelly and deep, cut through the hush of the room like a blade through silk. Before emperors ruled and monks named mountains, he said, there was Inari and her messengers, the foxes with eyes that burned like coals and tails that shimmered like falling stars. The children leaned in, lips parted, eyes wide. You mean the kitsune, Aji-sama? Little Aya asked, her voice barely more than a breath. Natsum nodded. But not just any fox. The kitsune is old, older than the ink of the Kojiki scrolls. It comes from the mists of China, where the Huli Jing hunted dreams. But here, in Nippon, the fox became more. It became a trickster, a lover, a god's voice. Outside, the wind rustled again, and the children huddled closer. But are they evil? Asked Genji, whose father swore he once saw a fox laughing near the temple at midnight. Not evil, Natsum replied, nor good. They are beyond such words. They are the spirits of ambiguity. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they punish. Always they test us. He stared into the fire, as if its flames were gateways into memory. In the days of the Yamato court, when the divine right of emperors was still uncertain, it was said that kitsune danced in the imperial gardens, whispering to courtiers, seducing nobles, and leading priests astray. The scene faded from the hearth to the memory Natsum conjured. In a sun-drenched glade of the 7th century, an imperial attendant named Lady Yukako wandered through the sacred woods of Mount Inari, her silken sleeves whispering against bark and bramble. Her heart, heavy with courtly betrayal, pounded with longing and rebellion. She had heard the rumors, a fox spirit in the shape of a golden-eyed man waited in the forest, offering liberation to those who found him. As twilight fell, a figure emerged, a man with hair the color of flame and a voice like a forgotten poem. You carry sorrow like a jewel, Lady Yukako, he said. Why not let it fall? Who are you? She asked, trembling. A friend to those who question the path laid before them. He reached out, brushing her wrist. The moment he touched her, memories not her own flooded her mind, running through forests on 4 paws, feeling the earth pulse with secrets, seeing men lie and gods weep. She gasped. Fox, she whispered. You're the kitsune. He smiled with canines too sharp to be human. And now, so are you. Back in the valley shrine, Elder Natsum's voice had grown hushed. It is said she vanished from the court, but a fox with her same eyes began appearing in the northern woods, guiding lost hunters and punishing greedy merchants. Aya's eyes glittered. So she became a spirit? Natsum nodded slowly. Or perhaps she always was one. The fire cracked. You see, children, foxes slip between worlds. They are yokai, yes, but also kami. Tricksters, yes, but also protectors. Each tale, each mask they wear, teaches us something we refuse to see. Outside the shrine, the wind quieted. And among the trees, watching from the shadows, a pair of golden eyes blinked. Before the red torii of Inari rose across the empire, before the mountain trails bore the clatter of pilgrim sandals, there was simply hunger. The rice paddies of ancient Japan, carved from stubborn soil and fed by fickle rains, demanded vigilance. A failed harvest meant starvation. In these desperate seasons, the villagers didn't just pray, they listened. And often, they said, the wind answered in a rustle of reeds or the flick of a white tail vanishing into the mist. That was when the kitsune first appeared, not as a trickster, but as a guardian of rice, a spirit of abundance with 1,000 tails and a gaze sharp enough to read a man's intent. In the 8th century, during the reign of Emperor Shomu, a monk named Genii stood alone before a field browned too early. The imperial granaries had begun to shrink, and the court blamed restless peasants and lazy farmers. But Genii saw it differently. He stood with his casa hat pulled low, whispering chants into the wind. "If Inari still hears us, let the messenger come," he intoned. The sun fell like a blade behind Mount Mikasa. As the sky turned indigo, the air turned electric. A breeze stirred the scorched field. Then, with the subtlety of a shadow, a single white fox appeared at the edge of the rice paddy. It did not bark or howl. It simply stared. Genii dropped to his knees. "You come not for offerings of gold, but for faith. I give it." The fox blinked. And behind it, in the withered stalks, came green shoots, new growth, sudden and impossible. A miracle. From that day onward, shrines to Inari Okami, the god of rice, prosperity, and earthly success, spread like flame across Japan. And always, at the heart of those shrines, stood a pair of kitsune statues, one male, one female, guarding with stone stairs and hidden secrets. One clutched a key in its mouth, the key to the rice granary. The other held a jewel, symbol of divine power and knowledge. But not all believed they were mere stone. In the highlands of Yamato province, a young shrine maiden named Chisato swept the steps of a newly built Inari shrine. She was small but spirited, barely 16, with a heart full of stories and hands calloused from labor. One morning, as she laid offerings of fried tofu at the altar, she noticed the statues had changed. The jewel had shifted in the fox's mouth. Slightly. Subtly. Impossible. Chisato blinked. Must have imagined it. But that night, she dreamed. Of foxes. Of a voice. "Feed us truth, and we'll protect your fields. Feed us lies, and we'll twist your dreams." The next morning, she woke to find footprints, tiny, clawed, delicate, beside the shrine. And the tofu had vanished. Thus began the rural pacts between farmers and foxes. Shrines became not just places of worship, but contracts between man and spirit. Foxes were courted, feared, bribed. The shape-shifting spirits were now civil servants of the supernatural, their loyalty bought not with obedience but with respect. In one such village in Aizu, a family left food at the same stone altar for 7 generations, claiming their rice never failed, even when the neighboring fields drowned or dried up. The head of the family, an old man named Minahiro, was once asked if he truly believed in kitsune. He merely smiled. "Believe? I've shared tea with one." Yet not all kitsune stayed kindly. Prosperity bred arrogance. And arrogance offended the spirits. In the capital, noblemen began to commission kitsune masks for their banquets, treating the foxes as symbols of cleverness rather than living spirits. One such noble, Lord Aritsun, mocked the shrine at Fushimi Inari. He scoffed at the offerings, insulted the priests, and defaced a fox statue after drinking too much plum wine. The next week, his rice stores caught fire, spontaneously, mysteriously. His servants vanished. And some say a woman with long red hair and golden eyes was seen walking away from the estate, smiling beneath the rising smoke. Back in Shinodazaka, Elder Natsum closed his eyes. You see, children, the kitsune were not born in temples. They came from the soil, from our fear of famine and our longing for abundance. When we honored them, they fed us. When we forgot, they reminded us. Genji whispered, but why do they still come now, when we have grocery stores and trains and lights? Natsum's mouth curled into a thin smile. Because even now, we hunger, for luck, for power, for love. And the fox, it feeds on that too. Night in the old provinces was a living thing, soft and velvet dark, pierced by the cry of night herons and the distant bark of foxes. And where the fireflies drifted between reeds like falling stars, stories grew. One such tale came from a hamlet near the Sagami River, whispered by Huthfire and sung in half-mourning tones. He loved her for a year and a day. She left him at dawn, when her tale wouldn't stay. The tale of Yasuda and the Fox Bride. Yasuda was a woodcutter, young but with an old man's heart. His parents gone, his life was measured in trees felled and bowls of millet. He had no need for poetry or temples, until the winter he found a woman collapsed in the snow. She wore no shoes. Her kimono was tattered. Her lips were pale, but her eyes, golden and unblinking, held him fast. I'm called Suki, she said, when he carried her home and wrapped her in his cloak. No family? He asked. They no longer remember me. He offered her rice and warmth. She stayed through the snowmelt. In spring, she became his wife. The villagers gossiped, of course. A woman out of nowhere? Always in the woods at night? Always cold, even in the sun? But Yasuda didn't care. He loved how she moved, like wind in tall grass, and how her voice carried old songs he'd never heard. She spoke of moonlit shrines and glens where the world forgot time. She knew herbs that healed wounds in half the days they should, and how to plant turnips that swelled fat and sweet in stony earth. He asked once, "How do you know these things?" She smiled sadly. Because I've lived many lives. One night, Yasuda returned home early from the forest. The door creaked open. Suki stood before the fire, removing her outer robe. And there it was, brilliant and white, curling gently behind her. A fox tail. She turned. Their eyes met. A long silence. You saw, she whispered. Why hide it? His voice cracked. Because you would not have loved me if I showed you too soon. I loved you before I knew, he said. And I love you still. Tears gathered in her golden eyes. But now you know, and I must go. By dawn, the house was empty but for a single white hair, caught in the reeds of the futon. Back in Shinodazaka, Elder Natsum let the silence settle. You see, children, the kitsune are not just guardians or pranksters. They are desire made flesh. They appear when our hearts ache with longing, for beauty, for mystery, for connection. Aya frowned. But if they love us, why leave? Natsum answered gently, because their world is not ours. Love cannot anchor what was born to wander. The kitsune as lover in history and song. These tales of kitsune no yomiri, fox weddings, are more than fantasy. During sudden sun showers, it was said a fox wedding was taking place in the hills. And villagers would turn to the trees, hoping to catch a glimpse of lanterns between the trunks. In Nara scrolls, there are records of samurai who claimed to marry beautiful women who vanished at the first full moon. In Heian poetry, noblemen write odes to lovers with flame-colored hair who taught them ancient secrets before disappearing like mist. Not all fox brides were gentle, though. Some bewitched men for sport, draining their life through pleasure and illusion. These kuro kitsune, or black foxes, were feared more than oni. They could wear the skin of a loved one like a mask and whisper lies sweet as plum wine. In Kyoto's Gion district, a courtesan named Koana was once famed for her beauty and skill. Men fell at her feet, merchants, magistrates, even monks. But none could truly recall her face after they left her room. Some said she never aged. Others said she vanished the night a silver fox was seen leaping from the roof of her tea house. To this day, her story is performed in no theaters under the title, The Fox Who Danced Alone. Natsum poured warm tea into small clay cups, steam rising like offerings. Some say the kitsune teach us about impermanence, that nothing, not even love, can be held forever. Others say they remind us to look beneath the surface. But I say they give us beauty too sharp to keep. Aya held her cup close. Would you fall in love with one, Aji-sama? He smiled into the fire. I think I already did. The fox is not merely sacred, nor solely romantic. It is the shadow behind the curtain, the laugh behind the screen door, the whisper that turns reverence into riddles. To honor the kitsune is also to be wary of it. For while some foxes bless rice fields and hearts, others teach through chaos, tricking the proud and humbling the cruel. Among the lacquered masks kept in village shrines and no stages, the fox's grin is always just a little too wide. The tale of the monk and the painted fox. Once, in the forest temple of Kurakamiyama, there lived a monk named Ryanen. He was known for his piety, but even more so for his pride. He refused offerings he deemed impure, lectured villagers harshly, and once cast a poor peasant woman from the temple steps for wearing perfume. It clouds the spirit, he said, turning his back as she wept. That night, as the cicadas cried in the dark, Ryanen found a scroll nailed to his chamber door. It read only, "The scent of truth is not so simple." He searched the temple grounds and saw nothing, but the next morning, the altar flowers had been rearranged into a perfect fox's face. For the next week, strange things happened. His rice bowl, when he bowed to eat, was filled with river pebbles. His robe was stitched shut at the sleeves. One morning, his head was shaved clean in his sleep, but in the reflection of his wash basin, his face appeared with long whiskers and fur around his jaw. Terrified, Ryanen lit incense and chanted all day. At midnight, the fox came. It was not monstrous. It stood upright, dressed in robes finer than his, and wore a no-mask of pure white. "You preach detachment," it said, "yet you cling to your purity like a miser to coin. Who are you?" Ryanen cried. "Merely a reflection," said the fox. "And now, I've shown you your truest face." At dawn, Ryanen wept and descended the mountain, giving his sandals to a beggar on the way down. Back in Shinodazaka, the children laughed as Elder Natsum finished the tale. "Even monks get pranked?" Genji said, wide-eyed. "Oh, especially monks," Natsum replied with a chuckle. "The fox knows our masks better than we do. The kitsune as trickster spirit. These pranks are more than childish games, they are moral parables, lessons dressed in laughter. The trickster fox of Japanese folklore is no buffoon. It plays with meaning itself. It takes the shape of officials, priests, or even loved ones to expose flaws we refuse to see." In the Edo period, satirical kabuki plays often featured foxes disguising themselves as pompous landlords, only to be outwitted by peasants or children. These plays were wildly popular, because they let the powerless laugh at the powerful, if only for a night. A famous saying from that time: "Beware the smile that smells of tofu." It meant a deal too good to be true, and possibly, a fox's doing. The sly messenger of the kami. Even Inari's divine foxes were not above trickery. In one Kyoto tale, a greedy merchant tried to bribe the shrine's priest to bless a shipment of spoiled sake. That night, he dreamed of a kitsune who led him through the market, revealing his name written on every cask, but spelled backwards. The merchant awoke to find the casks exploded, and the sake turned to vinegar. The message was clear: you cannot cheat the gods without first fooling their messengers. Play, wisdom, and balance. What makes the kitsune trickster different from other yokai is its intent. It does not punish from cruelty, it teaches through imbalance. It pranks the liar to reveal truth. It mocks the rigid to inspire humility. In the no-play Kitsune no Kyuzumai, a fox dances in layers of silk, changing masks with each step: woman, monk, soldier, child, before revealing its own face. The moral is simple: all humans wear masks. The fox just changes faster. Natsum leaned back, watching the fire crackle. You must always ask, is the world you see real, or a lesson in disguise? Sometimes, when you get lost, it's not a punishment. It's a fox teaching you a better path. Aya clapped her hands. So, when we lose our way in the woods, it might just be a kitsune? Natsum smiled. Yes. And if you're lucky, it might prank you just enough to find your way back, wiser than before. Long ago, when the mountains still spoke to each other and the rivers remembered the names of the stars, the fox spirits moved between realms like wind through pine. To the untrained eye, they were simply kitsune, foxes that tricked, taught, and vanished with the moon. But to those who studied deeper, those who could read the brushstroke of magic in a paw print or the echo of power in a whisper, it became clear: not all foxes are the same. Some bore one tail. Some bore 9. And some, those spoken of only in dreams and forbidden chants, bore more than that. The tales of ascension. In folklore passed down by Yamabushi hermits and hidden mountain monks, a kitsune's number of tails reflects not its age alone, but its spiritual evolution. A tail is not just an appendage, it is a manifestation of power, wisdom, and mastery over illusion, time, and even death. One-tail kitsune are young, often playful or mischievous. Three-tail kitsune possess stronger illusion magic, capable of fully mimicking humans for extended periods. Five-tail kitsune are rare and often serve as messengers to Inari or wander as protectors of shrines. Nine-tail kitsune are nearly divine. They walk between this world and the spirit realm, and their breath can heal, or kill. 13-tail kitsune, called Muga no Kitsune, exist only in rumor and myth. It is said they appear once every 1,000 years, blazing with light so fierce it erases the memory of all who see them. The tale of Tamamonome. Among the nine-tailed, none is more feared, or revered, than Tamamonome. In the court of Emperor Toba in the 12th century, she was the most dazzling courtesan, her skin flawless, her wit unmatched, her voice able to stop storms mid-rage. Ministers vied for her gaze. Even the emperor fell ill when she left his presence. But strange things happened wherever she walked: ink soured, priests grew mute, and candles snuffed themselves when she entered a room. The Onmyoji Abe no Yazunari was summoned. She is no woman, he declared. She is a fox, a nine-tailed demon cloaked in flesh. When cornered, Tamamonome laughed, a sound like a bell struck too hard. Her form burst into flame, revealing her true self, a monstrous, golden fox with 9 blazing tails. She fled north, slaughtering warriors with mere glances until struck down by an arrow of sacred iron. But some say she did not die. In Natsum's village, Aya had heard the name before. She asked, "Aji-sama, is Tamamonome still alive?" Natsum did not answer immediately. There are scrolls hidden in shrines too old to name. Some say she split herself into lesser foxes, hiding across the land. Some say she awaits rebirth in a time of great chaos. And some, he paused, glancing at the fire, some say she never left. Genji swallowed. Could she come here? She comes everywhere, Natsum whispered. Not always in fury, but always with purpose. The path of ascension. To become a nine-tailed kitsune is not simply to live long, it is to transcend. The path reflects both Shinto reverence for nature spirits and Buddhist principles of enlightenment. A fox that grows in power must also grow in compassion, cunning, and clarity. Those that fail become twisted, wild yokai feared even by other spirits. Legends say that each tale forms only when a kitsune learns a new cosmic truth. The tale of patience. The tale of selflessness. The tale of sacrifice. The tale of illusion mastered, not abused. And so on. When a fox grows its ninth tail, it is said that its soul shines like the star Kuzunoha, burning forever in the night sky. In the shrine at Shinodazaka, Natsum lit a single candle in front of a weathered statue, one of a nine-tailed fox surrounded by falling plum blossoms. This, he said softly, was carved by my ancestor after dreaming of a white kitsune with blue fire in her breath. He said she told him, there are more paths to truth than lives to walk them. Then she vanished. Aya stared into the flame. I want to see her someday. Natsum looked at her with gentle pride. Perhaps you already have. You just didn't know which tail she wore. The wind that howls across a battlefield carries more than ash and iron. It carries omens. Whispers. Shadows in the mist that turn warriors' blood cold. And among these, few were feared, or honored, more than the sudden, silent appearance of a fox. To the superstitious, the fox's cry before battle meant death. To others, it was a blessing, a spirit guide come to shield the worthy and curse the arrogant. In the age of samurai, the kitsune was not merely a trickster or spirit, it became a force that shaped destiny itself. The tale of Lord Takeyoshi and the Crimson Fox. In the Sengoku era, where betrayal bloomed like wildflowers and loyalty was bought in coin or blood, a young daimyo named Takeyoshi of Suruga rose fast through cunning. His blade was sharp, his banners bright, and his enemies wary. But one night, before a crucial siege against a rival clan, he wandered the outskirts of his war camp, haunted by unease. There, beneath the full moon, he saw it. A fox, not white, but crimson, with fur like flame and eyes like twin suns. It sat atop a mound of helmets, gazing at him without fear. Takeyoshi drew his sword. The fox did not flee. Instead, it stood and bowed. Do not unsheathe your blade tomorrow, it said, though its mouth did not move. The sword that strikes in greed returns in ruin. Takeyoshi froze. What are you? A memory yet to happen, the fox replied. Then vanished. The next morning, he disobeyed the vision. His forces attacked. At first, victory seemed assured, until one of his generals defected. The ambush that followed decimated Takeyoshi's troops. His castle was burned. His lineage ended. Years later, ash grew thick where his camp once stood. And still, they say, a crimson fox walks among the ruins, warning those too proud to listen. The kitsune as warrior's spirit. Samurai did not speak of fear easily. But in hidden scrolls and whispered pillow books, many confided encounters with kitsune who saved their lives, or destroyed their minds. One archer of the Usuji clan claimed a fox leapt into his arms just before he loosed an arrow, causing him to miss. The shot would have struck a vassal, sent by mistake to scout, not an enemy. A retainer in Kyushu fell in love with a woman who encouraged him to forego battle and become a monk. He followed her. Days later, his battalion was slaughtered. He wept at the temple steps, and saw a white tail vanish behind a cedar tree. Not all foxes worked through compassion. The shadow kitsune, known as kirajitsune, would attach themselves to ambitious lords, feeding off their ego, fanning their thirst for power. At first, their advice would bring success. But over time, it turned darker, demanding cruelty, betrayal, paranoia. A record from the Tokugawa period warns. If your advisor disappears in mirrors, or your lover avoids shrines, look for the tale. The Fox Blade, Legends of Enchanted Steel. In rare cases, foxes gave warriors more than visions. One legendary sword, Kajitsun Maru, Little Fox Blade, is said to have been forged by the smith Munakika with divine aid. The story tells that a white fox appeared to the blacksmith as he prayed for help forging a blade worthy of a great lord. The fox took human form and struck the hammer alongside him, singing a forging song in a language no man remembered. When the blade was finished, its edge never dulled, and its wielder won every duel, but could never lie, or the blade would shatter. In Natsum's shrine room, a small sword hung in lacquered black wood. Its handle was plain, but the guard was carved in the shape of a fox curling around a chrysanthemum. "It's just a replica," he told the children. But the real Kajitsun Maru was lost centuries ago. "Do you think it still exists?" Genji asked. Natsum smiled. "Perhaps. If it does, it's waiting for someone who needs not a sword, but a reminder. Honor, spirit, and the kitsune's gaze." The fox taught warriors more than war. It taught them restraint. Reflection. That the true enemy was not always the one across the battlefield, but the one in the mirror. In Shingon temples, monks sometimes meditated with fox effigies placed behind them, so that they would not forget to consider what watches when the back is turned. As one old saying goes, "A samurai draws his blade once. A fox draws it with the eyes of gods." Not all foxes come as guides. Not all illusions bring wisdom. There is a darker tale that creeps beneath the silken paws of the kitsune mythos, a tale of invasion, of haunting, of possession. In the folds of Japanese history, especially from the Heian period through the Edo era, whispers grew louder of a phenomenon feared more than curses, more than illness: Kitsune-tsuki, the state of being possessed by a fox spirit. The tale of the scribe's daughter. In the town of Tsuwano, nestled between forested hills, a respected scribe named Yoshihide lived with his daughter, Tomiko. She was quiet, obedient, and sharp as a calligraphy blade. By age 13, she could quote entire chapters of the tale of Genji and was said to dream in poetry. But then the dreams changed. She began to speak in strange voices. Not deep or monstrous, but many at once. Her movements turned twitchy, her laugh sly. She would vanish into the fields for hours and return with dead birds cradled gently in her kimono sleeves. And when her mother scolded her, Tomiko grinned and said, "The meat is for the cubs in my belly." At first, Yoshihide believed she was mad. But then came the signs. At night, her fingernails grew inhumanly long, only to return to normal by morning. She knew things she had no way of knowing, gossip from other towns, deaths yet unreported. And her eyes, once soft and brown, shone golden when candlelight hit them just so. A Yamabushi priest was called from Mount Daisen. He sat with Tomiko for 3 days, whispering sutras, burning incense, laying lines of rice powder across the doorways. On the 4th day, she screamed, not like a girl, but like something cornered in the woods. When she awoke, she was herself again. But she never spoke another poem. The phenomenon of Kitsune-tsuki. In hundreds of historical accounts, some recorded in temple logs, others in court archives, people across Japan were believed to have been possessed by fox spirits. It was not considered metaphor. It was real. Symptoms included sudden changes in behavior or voice, Obsession with raw food, especially tofu or meat. Hallucinations of fire or fur. Hyperawareness or unexplained knowledge. Sudden ability to speak unfamiliar dialects or archaic language. Women were most frequently reported as victims, especially those on the fringes of society, orphans, widows, or those resisting arranged marriages. Many scholars today see it as a manifestation of psychological rebellion, wrapped in spiritual language. But villagers didn't ask for Freud. They asked for exorcists. Fox possession and social control. Kitsunsuki wasn't always a curse, it was sometimes a weapon. There are Edo period records of families being ostracized simply for being accused of harboring fox spirits. Merchants would refuse to trade with them. Children were forbidden to marry into their bloodlines. These were known as kitsunmachi, fox keepers, people believed to command or attract foxes for their own gain. And in a world where unexplained illness, madness, or poverty needed reasons, the fox offered a convenient scapegoat. In one infamous case in Tottori, a woman named Umi was accused of fox possession because she spoke out against village taxes. After a staged exorcism, she was banished, though some claimed the local priest's niece suddenly had more silken robes than before. Faith, fear, and the blurred line. In Shinto, where spirit and self overlap like silk layers in a kimono, the line between hosting a god and being haunted by one is thin. Some viewed kitsune possession not as punishment, but as divine calling. In parts of northern Japan, miko, shrine maidens, entered trances and invited fox spirits into their bodies to deliver prophecy. They twitched and barked. Their eyes rolled. And the villagers believed. One such miko, Keo of Aomori, was said to be the voice of 13 foxes. She predicted births, plagues, and storms with uncanny accuracy. But one day, she fell silent mid-chant and collapsed. The foxes, she said before dying, had left to find someone who would listen. Back in Shinodazaka, Natsum stirred the embers. Sometimes, he told the children, when you see someone behaving strangely, talking to the wind, scratching at shadows, remember, not all madness is madness. Could it still happen today? Aya whispered. Natsum nodded. Foxes do not need shrines. They need cracks in the heart. And the world has many hearts now, cracked wide open. There are places in Japan where the night glows not with moonlight, but with fire that dances like thought, silent, cold, unburning. This flame does not crackle. It does not warm. It glows blue-white like memory and vanishes the moment you try to touch it. They call it kitsunbai, foxfire. The tale of the crossroads lanterns. In the damp hills outside Aizu, a road forked in 3 directions. Long ago, travelers told of ghostly lights hovering above the crossroads. Some swore they saw lanterns floating mid-air, bobbing gently in procession. Others followed the lights, hoping for guidance, only to wake up miles away, barefoot and dazed, with no memory of how they got there. The villagers called it the night parade of foxes, and none dared walk that road after sundown unless they carried salt in their pockets or iron pins in their sleeves. One winter, a merchant named Hanzo, skeptical of all superstition, took that very road. He did not return. His sandals were later found hanging neatly on a plum tree. Beneath them, the grass grew in a perfect spiral. No animals would go near it. And from then on, the foxfire at the crossroads burned brighter and red. What is kitsunbai? Scientifically, the phenomenon has been partially explained as phosphorescent light, caused by decaying organic matter, especially in damp areas like rice fields or graveyards. Gases like methane can sometimes ignite, creating eerie, hovering lights. But folklore never needed science to explain its mysteries. In the world of spirits, kitsunbai is seen as the fox's soul made visible, the physical expression of its presence or will. In many legends, foxfire appears before a major event, often death, transformation, or revelation. Leads travelers astray, or leads them to safety, if they pass a fox's test. Forms pathways between the human world and the spirit realm. Foxfire as communication. In one tale from Kagawa, a woman lost her infant to illness and wandered the forest in grief. One night, she saw a string of soft blue lights weaving through the trees. Desperate and numb, she followed. The lights led her to a small shrine she had never seen. On the steps, wrapped in cloth, was a bundle, her child's carved wooden rattle, untouched by time or weather. She fell to her knees. The wind whispered a lullaby. She left offerings every week afterward. And the lights never returned. Rituals and sightings. In parts of Shikoku and Tohoku, elderly priests still recount times when foxfire burned for entire nights. They say that if you see the flame and hear no wind, speak nothing. If you see it and hear wind, bow. There are tales of Miko, shrine maidens, lighting foxfire intentionally, calling the kitsune with chants and polished stones painted with sacred symbols. They would place the stones in running water and wait for the fire to appear above them, like the reflection of something unseen. One such Miko, Sayaka of Matsue, was said to draw foxfire on command. But her price was steep, a secret. A truth. Something you had never told another soul. And in exchange, the light would lead you to what you needed. Foxfire in morning and passage. Perhaps the most haunting use of kitsunbai comes in stories of death. It is said that when a fox dies, a powerful one, near its ninth tail, it leaves behind not a corpse, but a trail of lights. They drift skyward in spirals, forming constellations no chart has ever captured. This is called the fox's ascension, or Yobi no Michi. Families who claim ancestry linked to fox spirits sometimes light special lanterns at funerals, not for ancestors, but for unseen foxes that may be watching. In a lesser-known no chant, it is sung. Flame without heat, path without stone. Guide the soul that walks alone. O fox who watches death's low tide. Burn your fire and be our guide. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya asked Elder Natsum, "Have you ever seen foxfire?" He nodded slowly. "Once, as a boy, when my sister died. I wandered the forest behind the shrine, calling her name. Then I saw it, a small blue flame hovering above the moss. It didn't move, just waited. I followed it. And Genji leaned in. It led me to her comb. Perfect, clean, untouched. I buried it there and never saw the flame again." They were silent. "Was it her?" Aya whispered. "No," Natsum said. "But something carried her sorrow. Something gave it back to me, just enough to let it go." Before shrines bore her name and torii gates painted the hills red, before rice was sacred and foxes carried her messages, there was only Inari, a being as fluid as wind, as constant as harvest. Known as Inari Okami, she is the kami of rice, fertility, industry, and transformation. To some, Inari is a beautiful woman clothed in white, her eyes shaped like grain. To others, a bearded old man, laughing as he scatters rice seeds into the wind. To others still, she appears as a child, or as a fox herself. Because Inari is not one shape, and that is precisely why her messengers, the kitsune, serve her so well. The origin beyond time. Shinto tradition holds that Inari was born of the land itself, neither fully celestial nor mortal. She arose not with thunder or sword, but with the first field sown, the first green stalk bending under dew. In the Enja Shiki, 927 AD, one of Japan's oldest Shinto ritual texts, Inari is invoked as the god of food, grain, and prosperity. But the fox connection was not always part of her worship. That changed during the Heian period, when famine struck Kyoto and a white fox was seen standing before a withering rice field, unmoving, as if in prayer. The next day, rain fell. Crops revived. The priests took it as a sign. Inari's spirit did not ride the clouds or sun, it walked the earth on fox paws. Why foxes? The perfect messengers. Inari's domain is change, from seed to stalk, from hunger to abundance, from illusion to truth. Foxes are creatures of change. They appear and vanish with uncanny silence. Shift shape at will. Bring both blessing and punishment. Live near humans, yet remain wild. No other creature in Japanese lore mirrors Inari's ambiguity so well. Whereas other kami rely on messengers like crows, yatagarasu, or dragons, Ryujin, Inari chose the fox because it can walk unnoticed in both the divine and the mundane. A fox can be worshipped, feared, kissed, or killed, and still return in another form. The shrines and the offerings. Today, over 30,000 Inari shrines exist across Japan, more than any other kami. The most famous is Fushimi Inari Taisha, in Kyoto, where thousands of red torii gates wind through the mountain like a path carved by flame. Each shrine holds statues of kitsune, usually in pairs. One often holds a key in its mouth, symbolizing the rice granary. The other may hold a jewel, scroll, or sheaf of rice, symbols of wisdom, knowledge, and bounty. Offerings to Inari are always presented through the foxes, aburage, fried tofu, sake, or Inari zushi, rice wrapped in tofu skin, left at their stone paws. At twilight, when the lanterns flicker and the incense curls like smoke through a dream, old priests still bow and whisper. To Inari, through the fox. To the fox, through the rice. To the rice, through the earth. The court of Inari in myth. In rare tales, those whispered only in mountain temples or sung in hidden Shugendo scrolls, there is mention of Inari's invisible court, where the kitsune do not just serve, but rule in her name. This court exists in the realm between sleep and waking, where elder foxes with 12 tails act as judges of human karma. Messenger foxes fly on winds to deliver omens in dreams. Guard foxes patrol sacred rice fields not visible to the eye. Those who have seen the court and returned, always in trance or fever, describe it as a field of infinite stalks, each rice grain a soul, each fox tending it with care or flame. One such man, a Kyoto priest named Kenshin, claimed that Inari showed him a fox with fur made of written words, sutras, poems, regrets, and secrets all inscribed across its body. "This is what your people feed us," the fox said. Not food, but meaning. Inari and transformation. Inari is not just the goddess of agriculture. She is the force behind all transformation, and so her foxes are not bound by morality or form. They appear as teachers, tricksters, lovers, and guides because the world needs each role. To love a fox is to love what cannot stay. To serve Inari is to trust in what is not yet seen. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya stared at the little offering bowl beside the shrine's kitsune statue. "Do you think Inari hears us through them?" she asked. Natsum nodded. "I think Inari speaks through them too. And maybe, when the wind is just right, they even listen back." Some say the greatest illusion a kitsune ever cast was not a trick of the eye or a dream whispered into a sleeping heart. It was love, true, imperfect, and fragile. And from that love, sometimes, came children, born of two worlds, belonging fully to neither. This is the story of one such child. The tale of Sayuri, the fox's daughter. In a moss-covered village between Mount Asama and the sea, there lived a potter named Ichiro. He was quiet, kind, with strong hands and a patient heart. His wares were known far and wide, not because they were flawless, but because they felt alive, as if each bowl remembered the warmth of a hand, each cup the shape of lips. One night, during an early spring storm, a woman knocked at his door. She was drenched, barefoot, and wrapped in robes too fine for the mountains. Her hair was dark as ink, and her eyes gleamed amber in the lightning. "I am lost," she said. "May I stay until the wind tires?" Ichiro gave her his fire, then his name, then his heart. Her name, she said, was Yukari. They lived together for 7 years. She never aged. She never ate meat. She walked silently, even in snow. But she laughed like water over stone, and when she sang, foxes came to the edge of the woods to listen. Their daughter, Sayuri, was born on the night of a full moon haloed in fire. Her hair was white as frost. Her eyes were gold from the first breath. "She has your light," Yukari whispered, holding the child. Ichiro nodded. "And your silence." But silence became sorrow. As Sayuri grew, the villagers whispered. Her ears twitched when no wind blew. She could feel people's secrets in their footsteps. Animals bowed to her without fear. The other children kept away. "Why don't they play with me?" she asked one day. Yukari's answer was soft. "Because they know you do not belong here forever." The day the fox returned to the forest. On Sayuri's 7th birthday, Yukari took her to the shrine on the edge of the woods. She placed a rice cake at the fox statue's feet. Then she turned to Ichiro. "I cannot stay. Not now. The wind calls." Ichiro's voice broke. "We are your family. You were my gift," she said, pressing her forehead to his. "But foxes who love too long grow claws in their hearts. I must go." She kissed Sayuri once, on the crown of her head. Then turned, and vanished into mist. The life between. Sayuri remained. She aged slowly. At 15, she could summon fireflies in winter. At 20, she healed a man's broken leg by singing to the bones. At 30, she looked 20. At 50, still the same. She never married. But people came to her from distant provinces, to learn stories, to ask about dreams, to leave offerings at her door when the harvest was poor. They called her the fox's daughter, and some built a small shrine in her name while she still lived. The legacy of the half-spirit. Folklore tells of other Hanayo, children born of kitsune and human. Some wandered, cursed to live between. Some vanished into mountains. A few became guardians of shrines, able to speak with kami and understand the unspoken language of wind and soil. Sayuri's name appears in the records of 3 villages, always with the same description: woman with white hair, kind eyes, and a voice like wind through reeds. She died alone, but peacefully. At her funeral, a white fox was seen sitting among the mourners. It did not move. It only watched. When the last chant faded, the fox was gone. And a cherry tree grew from the earth near her grave, white blossoms only, blooming in winter. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya stared at the old scroll hanging near the shrine. It showed a pale-haired woman in a kimono patterned with fireflies, kneeling before a fox with 9 tails. "Was that really Sayuri?" she asked. Natsum smiled. "Or someone like her. The stories aren't meant to be proven. They're meant to be remembered." Genji frowned. "Is it sad? That she couldn't belong?" "No," Natsum said, placing a hand on the scroll. "It means she belonged everywhere a little. That's the fox's gift and curse. There is a moment in Japan's countryside when the light plays strange games. The sky is bright, the clouds scattered, but rain falls softly, too gently for a storm, too brief for warning. These sun showers are called Kitsune no Yomiri, the fox's wedding procession. To the villagers who watch from doorways, it is not weather. It is omen. Celebration. A secret passage of beings more ancient than the road they walk. But for those who have seen it, truly seen it, it is a haunting joy that burns into memory. The tale of the lantern procession. In the mountain village of Kiso, there lived a hunter named Daijiro. He was a solitary man, more familiar with the wind song than human voices. He lived at the edge of the forest, where the trees thickened like old secrets. One summer afternoon, while resting on a ridge with his bow across his lap, the sun dimmed slightly, not dark, not clouded, but soft, as if veiled by silk. Then he saw them. A long procession, winding through the cedar trees, dozens of figures, each carrying a lantern that glowed with blue fire. Some were tall and robed, others slim as reeds, some hunched like elders, others dancing like children. But none had faces. Only fox masks, white and expressionless. At the front, a pair walked slowly, one in a silver kimono, the other in red. Between them hung a wedding veil, glittering like dew. Behind them, the lanterns flickered in time to a silent drumbeat. Daijiro watched, breathless. When he blinked, they were gone. He returned home soaked to the bone. But no storm had passed. And the air still smelled of incense and plum blossoms. Kitsune weddings, a veiled world. In folklore, fox weddings occur when no human is meant to see, yet some are blessed, or cursed, with the glimpse. These phantom ceremonies appear during sun showers or weather that contradicts itself. On twilight paths where shadows do not match their sources. Near old shrines, especially Inari shrines, where silence settles too quickly. The weddings are believed to bind not just fox to fox, but spirit to place, dream to dream. And they are dangerous to interrupt. One 17th century scroll warns. To spy upon a fox's wedding is to risk forgetting your own name. Another tells of a boy who watched from a tree. When he climbed down, he was 20 years older, with a silver streak in his hair. Blessings in disguise. Despite their mystique, Kitsune weddings are not always fearful. Some stories speak of fox brides visiting lonely travelers in dreams, brushing their cheeks with fire and leaving gifts behind, a rice sprig that never rots, a flute that calls wind, or the sudden return of health to a dying mother. In Okayama, an old folktale tells of a farmer who found a small fox injured by a trap. He freed it and fed it rice from his own hand. That night, a sun shower fell on his field, though the sky was clear. The next morning, the soil shimmered with golden dust. That year, he harvested enough rice to feed 3 villages. He built a small altar and left a fox mask on it. No one touched the mask. But every year on the same day, rain would fall from a cloudless sky, and the farmer's grave would be covered in white plum petals. Weddings of light and shadow. In some no plays, the Kitsune wedding is a metaphor for transformation through union. Not just the union of lovers, but of world and spirit, human and other. The bride represents illusion made real. The groom represents truth disguised. The wedding is the moment they accept both. In the play Kitsune no Yomiri Densetsu, a fox bride sings. My veil is woven from all I cannot say. My vow is silence. My husband is the shape that dreams wear. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya sat watching the sky as a thin drizzle fell under a shining sun. She turned to Natsum. Is it happening somewhere now? He nodded. Perhaps up on the ridge, he said. Or in the forest. Or behind the next breath. If you listen carefully, you might hear the lanterns. Genji grinned. What would happen if we went and looked? Natsum shook his head. You could lose a year. Or your voice. Or your fear. But sometimes, what you find instead is worth the price. Of all the objects feared and revered in fox lore, none is more potent, more dangerous, than the mirror. Not a weapon. Not a talisman. But a still surface, polished to silver, in which the kitsune might see not the face they wear, but the truth they hide. In Japan, mirrors are sacred. In the 3 sacred treasures of the imperial regalia, one is not a sword or a jewel, but the Yata no Kagami, the mirror of the sun goddess Amaterasu. It is said to reveal the soul. And foxes, who are masters of illusion, tread carefully around such truths. The tale of the lady in the bronze mirror. In a quiet village of Hida, a noblewoman named Lady Asuka lived alone in a manor that faced the eastern mountains. She was beautiful, untouched by age, and known for her silence. Men offered marriage, she smiled and refused. Monks offered wisdom, she bowed and stayed silent. Only her mirror knew her voice. It was an ancient bronze heirloom passed from her mother's line. Every morning, she would kneel before it and brush her hair, 12 strokes only. Every evening, she would light incense and whisper secrets to its surface. One night, her maid peeked. In the reflection, there was no woman. Only a white fox, curled and watchful. The next day, Lady Asuka was gone. The mirror remained. And no one ever dared look into it again. Mirrors in kitsune lore. Kitsune are masters of shape-shifting, but their power is not flawless. In many legends, mirrors are tools that reveal a fox's true form, even if disguised. Shatter their illusions, especially if blessed or passed through generations. Trap or reflect the soul of a kitsune attempting possession. Act as windows to the spirit realm, seen only at dusk or dawn. Certain families were known to pass down spirit mirrors, rumored to hum or tremble if a fox was nearby. Some shrines kept them hidden, wrapped in red cloth, said to be powerful enough to repel any illusion. But mirrors do not only expose kitsune. They test them. And sometimes, what they reveal is not a trick, but a truth the fox itself did not wish to face. The tale of the mirror duel. In a remote corner of Tamba province, a kitsune named Hyobi took human form and lived as a court musician for 30 years. His flute could make rain fall or hearts mend. He was adored. But another fox, jealous of his success, challenged him, not with blades, but with a mirror. "Let the court see what plays its love songs," she said. Hyobi, proud and unafraid, accepted. The mirror was placed before the nobles. He played one final song. As the last note faded, his reflection shifted, not to a beast, but to a child, crying alone in a rain-soaked forest. The court fell silent. Hyobi bowed once, then vanished. Reflection as revelation. In Buddhist thought, mirrors represent the emptiness of illusion. In Shinto, they are vessels for kami, things that both reflect and contain. For kitsune, who live by illusion, the mirror is not a threat, but a threshold. It's said that a fox who looks into a sacred mirror and does not flinch has passed a test, of ego, of longing, of self-deceit. Such a fox is ready for another tale. In rare cases, human children are said to have been born after a fox passed through a mirror and left behind more than just a reflection. These children, often marked by silver streaks in their hair, dream only in mirrors until they speak their first word. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya knelt before the tiny mirror in the shrine. It was old, cloudy, ringed in black rust. She leaned forward. Genji hissed, "Don't. What if it's magic?" She stared into it anyway. Nothing shifted. But for a brief moment, she saw a glint behind her own eyes, like fur turning in wind. Like a memory that wasn't hers. She blinked, and it was gone. Natsum smiled. Some mirrors show what we are. Some show what we might become. Aya touched her reflection, gently. Do foxes have mirrors? They don't need them, he said. They live in ours. There are mountains in Japan where even birds avoid the summit, where clouds cling like old regrets and paths appear only to those who do not seek them. These are not mere peaks of stone and snow. These are fox mountains, places where the veil is thinner, the wind carries memory, and kitsune walk as both pilgrims and kings. And above them all, the most whispered name is Mount Karama. The tale of the fire trials. It is said that in the heart of Mount Karama, beyond the cedar trails and beyond where human feet dare tread, there lies a monastery not made of wood or stone, but of illusion and flame. Only foxes with more than 5 tails may enter. They are drawn to it in dreams, guided by visions of fire that does not burn and stairways that echo with no footfall. There, the kitsune undergo what is called Hai no Shuren, the trial of fire. They are shown visions, of all their deceptions, of the lives they changed, the hearts they broke or healed. They must walk through them, unflinching. If they pass, they emerge with a new tale. If they fail, they forget who they are, and wander the mountain as shadows. Sacred mountains and the spirit path. In Shinto and Shugendo, mountains are living gods, places where ascetics train to shed the self and meet the divine. Foxes, too, are drawn to these sacred spaces, for they are beings in flux, creatures of growth and metamorphosis. Mountains like Mount Inari, home of Fushimi Inari, where thousands of red torii lead to fox statues and shrines. Mount Osor, the mountain of dread, where spirits speak through wind and volcanic ash. Mount Tagakushi, where ninjas once trained, but foxes whisper between stones and springs. Mount Karama, where the Tengu train, but foxes are said to test them. In hidden folklore, foxes have their own yamabushi, ascetic foxes who train in silence for centuries, learning to master not only illusion, but compassion. They wear robes of smoke. Their beads are carved from frost. Their sutras are written on leaves. The tale of Kahaku, the white climber. Kahaku was born with 4 tails, already rare. He had a fierce pride and a hunger for more power. When an elder told him that a 5th tail could only be earned through service, not tricks, he scoffed. I will climb Karama, he said. And take my tail from the flame itself. The mountain welcomed him with silence. He climbed for 7 nights, each night harder than the last. On the 8th, he reached the fire. It spoke in his mother's voice, in the tone of a child he once abandoned in a dream. It burned him, not in flesh, but in memory. He screamed. And when he emerged, he did not gain a tail. He lost 2. They say he now walks in human form, wandering temple steps and mountain paths, teaching humility to those who dare to test the gods. The mountain trials in human form. Not only foxes climb these mountains. Pilgrims, too, those who suspect their souls are part fox, or who seek answers in the wild silence, sometimes feel pulled to these peaks. One such woman, a calligrapher from Edo, vanished during her retreat on Mount Tagakushi. Months later, she returned, silent but changed. Her brushwork afterward could cause people to weep or fall into trance. When asked what she saw, she wrote, "A fox made of wind. A prayer that had no words. I did not speak because everything was already said." She died at 97. Not one wrinkle touched her face. Back in Shinodazaka, Genji stood at the edge of the forest path, gazing at the mountains beyond. "Do you think we'd ever find the fox monastery?" he asked. Natsum smiled. "Only if you weren't looking for it." Aya asked, "Would we be welcome?" He paused. "That depends. Are you going to lie to yourself when the fire shows you what you really are?" They said nothing. But from the forest, a gust of wind stirred the cedar branches, carrying the scent of smoke, cold and sweet. For every tale of wisdom and wonder, there are others that speak in whispers, of foxes who chased too much, loved too selfishly, or betrayed their own kind. Power, after all, has teeth. And kitsune, being closest to desire, often fall prey to it. Where they once guided, they now haunt. Where they once healed, they now wound. These are the stories of the cursed foxes, and those who bear their mark. The tale of Lord Tsunamesa and the Black Fox. In the waning years of the Kamakura period, a minor lord named Tsunamesa was obsessed with immortality. He drank elixirs brewed by mountain witches and kept scrolls of alchemy stolen from dead monks. One day, a traveler arrived, cloaked in black, eyes golden. He offered a deal. "Serve me 3 years," the fox said, "and I will give you life without death." Tsunamesa agreed. The fox served loyally, granting victories in war, silencing enemies, whispering secrets from locked doors. But after 3 years, when the fox asked for payment, Tsunamesa laughed. "You are mine now," he said. "You belong to me." The fox said nothing. But from that night on, Tsunamesa could not sleep. Not truly. He dreamed of flame. Of his own body decaying. Of claws pulling at his heart. He aged, but never died. His castle fell. His sons disowned him. His soul could not leave. He still walks, they say, in the ruins of his fortress, muttering apologies to shadows that do not forgive. Kurajitsune, the Black Foxes. Not all kitsune remain aligned with Inari or the natural balance. Kurajitsune, or Black Foxes, are born of pain, vengeance, and unfulfilled desires. They often attach themselves to households, promising fortune while secretly draining them of luck and love. Signs of a Kurajitsune curse. Sudden wealth followed by spiraling misfortune. Dreams of suffocation or fire. Fox paw prints near locked doors. Mirrors cracking without cause. To banish a Kurajitsune, a family must give up all unearned fortune, move far from their ancestral land, and offer a name to the winds, a name no one else must ever speak again. The tale of Shima the Oracle. In the port town of Iwajima, a girl named Shima was born with the ability to speak the future. Villagers came from across the province to hear her words. She could predict the tides, the birth of twins, and the deaths of corrupt tax collectors. But as her fame grew, so did her pride. She began to demand gifts, silks, coins, jewels. And her predictions turned cruel. Then one day, she screamed mid-prophecy. Her pupils turned gold. Her hair grayed in moments. And her body twisted, as if something were breaking its way out from inside. The next morning, she vanished. Only claw marks remained on the floor. Some say she had a fox spirit bound within her, and it devoured her for misusing its power. Others say she was the fox, and her human mask cracked from too much attention. The curse that haunts bloodlines. In some mountain clans, families speak of inherited fox curses, not of being possessed, but of being watched. Great-grandfathers who broke oaths. Great-aunts who betrayed lovers. And from those betrayals, a fox took notice. For generations after, strange things happen. Children speak to animals before they speak to people. Fires start in empty rooms. Brides vanish on their wedding night, leaving only a tuft of white fur. These families are not feared, but pitted. And sometimes, a wandering Miko will visit. She does not exorcise. She listens. She tells them the story of their ancestor. And when they finally weep, the fox leaves. Back in Shinotazaka, the rain fell harder than usual. Genji looked up from the coals. Aji-sama, are all foxes dangerous? Natsum stirred his tea. So is fire. So is love. So is a secret. But how do we know if a fox brings blessing or curse? You don't, he said. You only know what you bring to them. That's what they reflect. Aya whispered, so, the curse is already in us? Natsum smiled softly. Sometimes. The fox just helps us see it. As Japan's feudal cities bloomed with lanterns and laughter, the fox, ever adaptable, ever curious, drifted from mountain shrines to smoky backstreets. The floating world, or Yukio, was a place of artifice and indulgence, where courtesans wore masks more refined than any spirit, and actors wept with emotions they did not feel. It was here, in the alleys of Edo, in the shadows of kabuki stages and tea-houses, that the kitsune thrived in new ways, not as god, nor monster, but performer. And the city never saw it coming. The tale of Akari of the Silver Fan. In the Yoshiwara district, famed for its courtesans and moonlit decadence, there was a woman known as Akari. She wore only white, carried a folding fan with silver tails painted along its edge, and never slept in the same room twice. She knew things she should not. She could mimic a lover's handwriting after seeing it once. She could predict when a patron's fortune would rise or fail. And when she danced, the air around her shimmered, as if she moved just slightly out of time. Men ruined themselves to earn her gaze. One night, a jealous merchant tried to kill her in a fit of obsession. He burst into her room with a blade. He found only a white fox curled on the floor. The fox opened one eye. His sword turned to ash in his hands. He screamed. When help arrived, there was no fox. Only his reflection, staring back at him from every surface in the room, each reflection with golden eyes. Akari was never seen again. But every spring, a woman dressed in white is spotted walking through Yoshiwara's alleys, her fan open to the moon. Foxes and the art of performance. Edo was a city of masks. Its people spoke in layers, what was said, what was implied, and what was painted in brushstroke or verse. Kitsune, masters of illusion, fit into this rhythm easily. They became actors who played female roles so convincingly, their own gender became legend. Storytellers who never aged, spinning tales that echoed real events not yet happened. Street performers whose shadows moved faster than their limbs. In kabuki, the kitsune became a symbol of cunning and charm. Some plays featured fox spirits seducing or outwitting samurai. Audiences cheered the fox when it triumphed, not because it was good or evil, but because it was free. The merchant's bargain. In one folk story from Nyanbashi, a merchant fell on hard times. Each night, he prayed at a local Inari shrine, offering tofu and sake. On the seventh night, a fox appeared, not wild, but dressed in a tattered kimono. "I will revive your trade," she said. "But I want something in return." "Gold?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Your name. You may keep using it, but it will no longer belong to you." He agreed. The next day, his fortunes reversed. Buyers returned. Rice flowed in. But years later, when he died, the monks could not summon his spirit. His family could not find his grave. His name, written on the memorial, vanished overnight, replaced with a blank stone and a scattering of white fur. Kitsune in the ukiyo-e. Artists of the floating world often included foxes hidden in plain sight. A courtesan's hairpin shaped like a tail. A kabuki actor's shadow subtly fanged. Lanterns glowing with foxfire near bridges where none should be. One print, now lost but described in an Edo diary, showed a tea house full of beautiful women. But in the reflection of a spilled sake cup, their true forms showed, foxes, seated and smiling, with their tails curling behind them. It was titled simply, "The Ones Who Remember What We Forget." Back in Shinodazaka, Genji ran his fingers along the edge of a woodblock print depicting a dancing woman in flowing robes. Was she real? He asked. Natsum chuckled. The better question is, did she stop being real just because no one believed in her anymore? Aya asked, did foxes like cities? Not at first, he said. But the floating world wasn't bound by nature or shrine. It was illusion. And the fox knows how to live in illusion better than any of us. He gestured toward the horizon, where the stars of old Edo would have glowed like lanterns reflected in the Sumida River. And besides, where better to hide a fox than among people pretending to be themselves? Long before there were borders, there were stories. And among the oldest, most persistent shapes in those stories is the fox, a creature both revered and feared across Asia, walking the delicate line between goddess and ghost, seductress and sage. Though the kitsune is uniquely Japanese, her spirit travels. She shares kin with the Hulijing of China and the Kumiho of Korea, each born of different soils, shaped by different fears, but bound by a shared tale of transformation. To understand the Japanese fox is to look beyond the islands, into the myths that gave her form, and the paths where she chose to walk alone. The Hulijing, China's fox spirit. In ancient Chinese texts, the Hulijing is a fox spirit that often takes the form of a beautiful woman. Early tales describe her as a harbinger of ruin, seducing kings, whispering war, unraveling dynasties. The Shanhai Jing, classic of mountains and seas, dating back over 2,000 years, mentions nine-tailed foxes as beasts that live in the wilds and emit a cry like a baby's laughter. In the Han Dynasty, foxes were feared for possessing women and making them mad or prophetic. But later, in the Tang and Song dynasties, the Hulijing softened. She became a muse, a lover, even a spirit of kindness if treated with respect. She still deceived, but not always for harm. Much like the kitsune, her morality was fluid. Yet one key difference remained. The Chinese Hulijing seeks to become immortal through cultivation. The Japanese kitsune seeks to reveal, to others, and eventually, to herself. The Kumiho, Korea's wild fox. In Korea, the Kumiho is the darkest of the three, a nine-tailed fox that consumes human flesh, especially hearts and livers. She is often depicted as a cursed soul, unable to become human unless she refrains from killing for 1,000 days. The Kumiho lives in the margins, beautiful, tragic, feared. Her tales are warnings about temptation, trust, and the thin line between redemption and ruin. But even here, evolution stirs. In modern retellings, some Kumiho fight their nature. They fall in love. They protect the innocent. The fox begins to shift from predator to protector. And in doing so, she steps closer to her Japanese cousin. What makes the kitsune unique? Where the Hulijing aims upward and the Kumiho walks on the edge of a knife, the kitsune lives among us, unhurried. She is deeply entwined with Shintoism, as a messenger and manifestation of the Kami Inari. A teacher as much as a tempter, tricking not out of cruelty but to mirror our own flaws. A moral mirror, reflecting ambiguity, transformation, and the costs of desire. Unlike the Hulijing, who often operates in the courts of emperors, or the Kumiho who stalks forests, the kitsune appears at the edge of the village, just where the rice field meets the woods. She is the threshold. Tamamonome, a shared mythic figure. In one of Japan's most famous fox legends, Tamamonome, the beautiful consort of Emperor Toba, is unmasked as a nine-tailed fox causing sickness and chaos in the imperial court. But this same fox appears in Chinese and Indian mythology, first as a huli jing named Daji, who seduced the last king of the Shang dynasty, and later as a spirit of mischief in the tales of the Buddha's past lives. It's said she fled east after being driven out of China, into the Korean peninsula, and finally arrived in Japan, where she took her final form. This myth, passed across centuries and borders, became more than a monster tale. It became a cultural migration of fear, beauty, and the woman who knew too much. The fox's journey in art and language. In scrolls and prints, fox spirits from each culture are marked by their shape. China, often regal, with flowing robes and coiled tails, standing near temples or palaces. Korea, wild-eyed, with sharp claws and blood-stained mouths, prowling graves and forests. Japan, playful or serene, with one paw in mischief and the other in mystery, sometimes holding a jewel, sometimes nothing at all. Even the word fox reflects this journey. Huli, derived from hu, meaning beard or hair, suggesting ancientness. Kumiho, literally nine-tailed fox, emphasizing danger. Kitsune, likely from kitsu, a fox's yelp, plus ne, affectionate suffix, a name born from sound, not fear. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya sat before a weathered scroll from Natsume's collection, one painted in dusty red ink. It showed a fox in mid-step, one paw in a Chinese palace, one in a Korean forest, one in a Japanese shrine. "Is this all the same fox?" she asked. Natsume nodded. "Different masks. Same eyes." Genji leaned closer. "So she just kept running?" "Not running," Natsume said. "Becoming. Every culture gave her a story. And she gave each one a choice." Aya tilted her head. "Which one?" He smiled. "To fear her, or to learn from her. Some kitsune trick. Some guide. Some vanish like smoke after a kiss. But once, they say, there was a fox who stopped the world for love. Not to deceive, nor to teach, but to pause the very breath of time itself, if only to hold on to a moment that would otherwise be lost. This is her story. The tale of Seo and the falling petal. In a secluded village cradled by maple trees, there lived a weaver named Seo. She was quiet, kind, and made robes so delicate they were said to ripple with a breeze even when none blew. Every morning, she walked to the river to wash her silks. And every morning, she passed a cherry tree whose blossoms bloomed early, even in the frost. There, under the petals, she would always see him, a young man with auburn hair and eyes like dusk. He never spoke. He only nodded, and she nodded back. This silent ritual went on for 100 days. Then, one morning, the cherry tree was bare. And the young man was gone. Seo waited. The seasons turned. One night, unable to bear the ache in her chest, she cried out beneath the empty branches. "Why did you leave?" The wind answered, not with words, but with a petal. Just one. It floated from the sky as if time had unraveled. And then, the world stopped. The river froze mid-sparkle. The cicada's hum stilled in its throat. The stars froze in place, like grains of salt spilled on black lacquer. And standing beneath the tree was the young man, unchanged. "I didn't leave," he said. "I only paused." Seo fell to her knees. "What are you?" He knelt beside her, brushing the petal from her hair. "I am a fox. And I love you." And this moment was too perfect to lose. The price of stillness. In the realm of spirits, time is not linear. For kitsune, especially those with many tails, time is a thing to bend, but only at great cost. To stop time for a human is a sacred violation, and one that cannot last. Each breath stolen from time requires a sacrifice, memory, form, or tale. The young fox, whose name was Haru, knew this. But he had watched Sayo too long. He had memorized her smile, her hands, the way she hummed when folding fabric. So he froze the world, for a moment. For a kiss. For a conversation they were never meant to have. And when it ended, when the stars moved again, and the wind returned, he was gone. All that remained was a single white fox tail caught in the cherry branches. Frozen in memory. Sayo never forgot. She wove robes afterward in pale pink and silver, patterned with foxes and falling petals. She never married. But every year, on the night of the cherry moon, she would sit under that tree and wait. And every year, just as the moon touched the branches, time would stutter, for half a heartbeat. And a petal would fall, slower than should be possible. Some say that in those moments, she saw him again, if only for an instant. The echo of the tale. The story of Sayo and Haru is told only in certain rural shrines, usually near cherry groves or rivers where no wind ever seems to blow. It is not a warning, nor quite a love story. It is something older. A tale of what we're willing to give up for the moment we cannot bear to lose. Foxes can bend time, but they do so rarely. And only for those whose souls ripple in harmony with their own. It is said that if you see a petal falling upward, or a star pause mid-blink, a fox has paused the world, for love, for grief, for goodbye. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya stood beneath the village's old cherry tree. It was blooming early. A breeze stirred, and one petal drifted down. She caught it in her hand. Genji snorted. "You think that's from a fox?" She looked up at the sky, which seemed, just for a blink, too still. "I don't know," she whispered. "But it feels like someone wanted me to notice." Natsum, watching from the porch, nodded to himself. "There are moments," he murmured, "when the world should move, and doesn't. When you feel like the breath you're holding isn't just yours. That's when you know, a fox is near." Among the most mysterious symbols in kitsune lore is not the tail, nor the flame, but the jewel. Called kitsune tama, it is said to be the fox's soul made manifest, a glowing orb of light, power, and memory. In paintings and statues, foxes are often depicted holding the jewel in their mouths or nestled between their paws. But in stories, the jewel is more than a symbol. It is a promise, a gift, a weapon, and sometimes, a trap. For within it lies the truth of the fox. And to possess it is to hold their fate in your hands. The tale of the thief who stole a soul. In the forests of Izumo, there once lived a man named Kinta, clever with locks and swifter than the tax collectors he so often robbed. But cleverness, he believed, meant outwitting everything, even spirits. One night, as he passed beneath a moonlit cedar, he saw a fox sleeping under a plum tree. A small glowing orb floated just above her chest, pulsing like a heartbeat made of starlight. Remembering the stories, Kinta knew what it was, the kitsune's tama. He crept forward and took it. The fox did not stir. But the moment he touched the orb, his body went numb. 1,000 images burned into his mind: wars, lovers, forests blooming and withering, a child's laugh, a scream on a battlefield, the face of a monk who died alone. He dropped the jewel, but too late. The fox rose. Her eyes, no longer gold but searing white, fixed on him. "You've seen too much," she whispered. By morning, Kinta was found curled at the base of the tree, eyes open, unable to speak. Some said he was dead. Others swore he wept, but only when the moon rose. What is a kitsune tama? In traditional belief, the tama is not a literal jewel, but a spiritual core, a crystallized form of the fox's essence. To lose it is to become vulnerable, to be stripped of form, trapped in the human world, open to manipulation or death. It is said that if you find a kitsune tama, the fox it belongs to will haunt you relentlessly to retrieve it. Not with rage, but with sorrow, illusions, dreams. They may appear as a lost child, a lover, a dog at your doorstep. Anything to get it back. And if you return it willingly, the fox may grant you a wish. But if you do not, you carry the weight of their unfinished stories forever. The tale of Koana and the fox's gift. In the village of Saku, a blind poetess named Koana was known for singing songs she could not have known. Verses about storms in other provinces, laments of courtesans long dead, lullabies in dialects no longer spoken. When asked where she learned them, she smiled. "A fox once gave me her jewel," she said, "so I might see the world." They thought her mad, until one winter, a fox with 8 tails was seen circling her home 3 times, then vanishing into falling snow. After that, her songs changed. They became softer, sadder. She sang not of glory, but of longing. Not of battle, but of farewell. She died with a faint light resting on her chest. It flickered once, then faded. Forging the jewel, a kitsune's trial. Rare among their kind, some kitsune choose to create their jewel while still young, as a vow of intent. The process is said to involve weaving 5 dreams of mortals into one, offering one's own tale to the flame of a sacred lantern, whispering a truth the fox has never spoken, even to themselves. The result is not only power, but clarity. Such foxes carry their jewel openly, not in fear, but as a sign of purpose. To give one's jewel to a mortal is the ultimate gesture of trust, for a kitsune who loses their tama may never find their way back to the spirit world without it. It is a love beyond form. A loyalty deeper than magic. Back in Shinodazaka, Aya held a marble from Natsum's shelf, cloudy and warm. "Is this a real kitsune tama?" she asked. Natsum smiled. "Would you return it if it was?" She blinked. "I think I would. But I'd want to ask what the jewel remembered." He nodded. "That's why they choose wisely." Genji asked, "Have you ever seen one?" Natsum's gaze drifted to the door, where dusk painted shadows in long strokes. "Once. I didn't touch it. But it glowed with the weight of 1,000 names. In the quiet beneath all noise, in the stillness under all stories, there is said to be a place where the oldest fox sleeps, a place beneath Mount Inari, hidden in stone and time, where even the gods speak in whispers. She is called Yamio, the last fox, the forgotten tale, the keeper of the echo flame. She is not feared. She is not worshipped. She is remembered only by silence. The tale of the pilgrim without prayers. When the age of shrines began to fade, when neon swallowed starlight and vending machines stood where rice fields once bowed to the wind, there lived a man named Tetsuo, a retired train conductor from Osaka. He had no children, no wife, no shrine at his family's home. The world had moved fast, and he had kept time for others. But when his heart began to fail, and the doctors gave him quiet months, he felt a pull, not to temples or family graves, but to Mount Inari, where red torii still climbed like spines of a sleeping dragon. He packed nothing but tea and old sandals, and began to walk. As he passed each gate, the air thinned. The tourists vanished. The vending machines stopped humming. And the birds grew silent. Near the summit, a stone stair appeared, one he had never seen in his youth. Narrow, crooked, veiled in mist. It led down. He followed. For 3 days he walked in a twilight tunnel, lit only by old torii gates sunken into the earth. They leaned, broken and moss-cloaked, yet still warm beneath his fingers. On the 4th day, he entered a cavern of silver roots, each glowing faintly. At the center, a fox. Not small. Not white. But immense. Gray as ash. Her fur shimmered with constellations. 9 tails curved around her like a sleeping storm. She opened one eye. Tetsuo wept. The fox that dreamed the first word. Yamiyo was not a trickster, nor a bride, nor a guide. She was the origin, the first fox to speak, to lie, to love, to mourn. It was said that when the first human asked why the stars blinked, she whispered the answer. And from that whisper, language was born. But as stories grew, she grew still. She became too old for movement. Too full of names. So she lay beneath the mountain, carrying the weight of all foxes who came after, watching through their eyes, dreaming through their illusions. She did not intervene. Until Tetsuo arrived. The fox and the final name. He knelt and bowed, though she had not asked. "I have no prayers," he said. "But I remember you." She spoke, not with sound, but with memory. "Then I am not gone." She offered him a gift, a moment outside of time. In it, he saw every station he had ever passed, every face he had ever smiled at. His mother holding his hand. His wife waving from a window. His own heartbeat as a child. And then she gave him her final tale. It burned, then vanished. He did not feel younger. But he no longer feared dying. Tetsuo returned down the mountain. The stairway vanished behind him. When he passed, his breath stilled like a bell after the last note. His body was cremated, his ashes scattered by the Fushimi Torii. And somewhere deep beneath the mountain, the last fox stirred. Her eye closed. And the silence she carried became, for a moment, the softest song. Back in Shinodazaka, Natsume sat in silence after finishing the tale. Aya and Genji did not speak. The sun was setting. The last light glinted on the shrine's fox statues, making them seem, for just a moment, alive. Aya whispered, "Do you think she's real? Yamiyo?" Natsume smiled faintly. No one remembers the first word. But it shaped every word after. And somewhere, that echo still lives. Genji looked out at the mountain. Then maybe we're just walking her dream. From the mist-shrouded mountains to the flickering lanterns of Edo, from rice fields to riverbanks, from lullabies to last breaths, the fox has never truly left. She has walked among us as guardian, trickster, lover, and ghost. She has hidden in the folds of our stories, waiting. Watching. Not for worship. But for understanding. The fox as mirror. In every tale, the kitsune holds up a mirror, not of glass, but of possibility. She shows us the ambition that seduces us, Tsunamesa and the black fox. The yearning that undoes us, Seiyo and the stop time. The love we fear to lose, Sayuri, the fox's daughter. The price of forgetting our old gods, Yamiyo under the mountain. Foxes are full of contradiction. So are we. That is why the kitsune endures. More than a myth. To ask why Japanese folklore is full of foxes is to ask why humans dream. The kitsune is not merely a spirit of nature or a relic of superstition. She is what we cannot explain, made graceful. She is what we deny, our lies, our longing, our transformation, made beautiful. She does not obey. She does not fit. She shifts. She survives. And that is why she remains. The story never ends. Even now, in quiet corners of Kyoto, old women leave tofu beneath shrines not for worship, but for memory. Even now, in theaters and anime and street art, the fox dances again, tail curled, smile sly, voice unchanged. She lives in modern forms. In the girl who pretends to be cruel because kindness once cost her. In the man who tells stories no one taught him. In the artist who paints things that shouldn't be remembered, but are. She lives wherever someone asks a question not for the answer, but for the feeling it gives. She lives in you, reader. If you've walked this far, some part of her already follows you home. The final tale, the shrine that waited. In Shinodazaka, the children grew. Aya became a calligrapher, her brushes ever still in her twilight years. Genji became a schoolteacher, always beginning lessons with old stories. When Natsum died, they held his memorial beside the fox shrine. No priest officiated. Only a circle of candles. And silence. That night, under a gentle sun shower, someone saw a single fox standing on the path behind the shrine, unmoving, unwatched. But not alone. The next morning, at the base of the fox statue, a folded piece of paper had appeared. On it, a poem, written in Natsum's hand. I told you not the truth you sought, but the truth that sought you. If you still walk the path I lit, you've already found me. And so, why are Japanese stories full of foxes? Because they are not stories about foxes. They are stories about us, disguised. And no creature wears a human soul better than the one who never pretended to be human at all. But only for now. The fox waits. The next story is already following you home.